Okay, now that we have everything set up and laid out, I'm just going to begin animating. Since I have my background elements here grouped into one group, I'm just going to use this group here to animate it in. So here's my timeline. I'm going to set my axis center. I'm just going to use my back group here to animate it in. So here's my timeline. I'm just going to set it to 15. I'm going to hit set keyframe. I'm going to rewind my timeline. I'm just going to use the X rotation here to have this come in. So I'll just rotate it down like that. It kind of rotates in. It cuts in really quickly, but I'm not too concerned with that right now. So that's the background. Here's the headline. So we can have this come in however we want. So this is our BG here, this group. Maybe I'll just have this scale in or grow in from the left. So our first element here is this rectangle. I'm just going to keep this fairly simple. I'm going to adjust the axis center to left, adjust the scaling to single. It's at 15, that's fine. I'm going to rewind the timeline and just scale it down to 0 and have it shoot across like that. Probably do the same thing for this gradient, so I'll go ahead and set the axis center to right. Maybe we'll offset the animation a little bit, so we'll have it land at 18. I'll set keyframe, I'll rewind this down and then set my scaling to single and have that animate on from the left like that. We hit play and there we have two elements animating on. So I'll move down to my headline banner here and we have two elements basically. We have a subline, we have a blue line, and then we have this other design element here that we can work with if need be. So I'm just going to start with the blue banner. And let's just have this fly in from either the left or the right. So I'll go ahead and set keyframe where I want it to land. I'll rewind my timeline and let's just move it in from the right side like that. We'll go ahead with the white group. We'll have this land wherever we want, right around there. I'll set a keyframe. I'll adjust my timeline and I'll have this fly in from the right side like that. We hit play and there we have two things animate in. This gradient here, we didn't really do too much with it, so I'll just have this quickly animate on from the right side here. So it's going to land there and we'll also just bring that in from the right. So we're done with that one. We'll close that group off. Here's our headline text. So if we want to animate these in, I'll just use a text effects. How about we just use the text effects scale again and we'll just animate that in like that. So it's going to land around 55. I'll hit set key. We'll readjust our timeline and we'll take our progress percentage up to 100. Of course, I just did that in reverse. So I need to go into my animation here and just kind of reverse these keyframes like that. And now it's actually going to spread on. So we can just take that text effects, copy that down to the next one. And if we want to change the direction in which it animates on, we can just choose the direction in opposite. We hit play and now it goes in the opposite direction. Now we need to start animating our other parts here. So here we have our BG box and let's just keep this simple too. I'm going to animate this on by scaling it. So I'll put it at top, maybe the left 2, and then we'll set our scaling here. So we'll set a keyframe there and rewind our timeline. We'll scale this down so that it comes up. So we hit play and you can see how that now scales up. Now we need to start working with our choices. So first, let's change our choice here to our full page text. And we'll come into our full page text here and we'll just use a text effects again. So we'll use the TFX scale. We'll go ahead and have this, maybe it will animate on and land at 40. So we'll go ahead and adjust our progress percentage to 100. We'll hit set keyframe. We'll rewind our timeline here and readjust our progress percentage down to 0 and hit set key. So this full page now animates on. If you want to adjust the timing, you can go into the stage and do that. Let's work with our headshots. So we're going to change this OMO. Now we could have very well easily animated this first and then copied it. That probably would have been the wise choice if you wanted to get real fancy with your animation. But since we have everything set up already, we'll just kind of keep this simple and keep moving here in the tutorial. So what I'm going to do is just select each headshot. I'm going to set the center point of the group to center. We're just going to set our timeline to where they should land. I'm going to hit set key and I'm going to rewind our timeline a little bit to where we want this to start. I'm going to scale this down, and you can see how, and when we do that, how it affects the other pictures as well. So what I'm going to do is come into each group and set the center point for them. So each one, I'm just hitting C for center, and I'm just going to copy this animation down for each one of them. And we hit play, that all scale up. Now, if you want to go in and kind of adjust the timing or offset each one of these animations a little bit with the scaling or the animation, that's fine. You can do that too. I'm just going to leave these as is. Since we are in the stage already, I'm going to go ahead and start working with our stop point, since we'll want this to animate in and out. So here's our default director. I'll go ahead and add a stop point here. Meanwhile, I'm just going to go ahead and start copying these keyframes. So I'm going to hold down C and just click and drag each one of these keyframes. Again, not paying too much attention to the speed or placement of these, just to keep things moving on this tutorial. I'm just going to quickly do this so that we can move to the last part of our design here. Okay, so we hit play, everything animates in. I can hit continue and everything will animate out. Now, a couple of things that we can do just to spruce this design up a little bit. We can add some flares to give it some dimension. We can add some looping animation as well. So for instance, the textures up here, I may want to loop them. And same with the back texture as well. So this hexagon texture, if you want to come in here and just kind of either rotate this a little bit, we can do that. So I'm going to go ahead and just set a keyframe for this texture. I'm going to have it start at 0, set a keyframe. And just so we see it, I'm going to rewind this a little bit. And then I'm just going to rotate this texture a little bit and hit set another keyframe. Now we have an animation. What I want to do is loop that. So I'm going to add a new director. I'm going to rename this director to loop. I'm going to drag that rectangle position into there and just slide these keyframes out to make it very much stretched out. And if you want to zoom out, you can use the Z and X key to zoom in and out of this stage. I'm going to click between the keyframes, click loop out, swing out, set it to infinity. Make sure both my directors are selected here when I hit play, and turn that little button off and they'll always be selected. So now we have a little bit of movement on that background image. Let's jump up into this headline where we have this split box or these little slanted lines. So if we wanted to also animate this thing and make a looping texture out of this, then we can just come up into the image editor here. I'm just going to select a point, a good starting point where we can set a keyframe. So I'll just go ahead and adjust the timeline. Here I have my texture set, hit set keyframe, and then I can just move this over in the direction that I want with a good loop point or a repeating point. I'm going to go ahead and set another keyframe. Here's the animation. I'm going to drop this, make sure it's in our looping director. We can spread the keyframe out, and I'm just going to turn on the loop. Now, if there's any other things that we need to loop, like for instance, we have this little design bar here. We didn't really do too much with it, but we could also loop that as well. If you want to bring it out forward above everything else too, you could certainly do that. So the option is there. But everything else seems to be animating on, and we hit play here, the graphic animates on, and we hit continue. If you wanted to check the full page, and we just have to come into our OMO, switch this, we can check that animation as well. If you need to adjust anything, go into the stage, slow it down, speed it up, readjust the position of it, and you're all set. All right, so now we're going to move on to our last and final scene that we're going to design for this.